myself how terrible I look. All right, who is here? All right, my friends, I just pressed the let's go live button, which means we've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet before we go ahead and get started. Let's make sure the tubes are connected. We're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're on Twitter, we're on Locals. We're everywhere, man. And it is important that the tubes are working before we go ahead and, start just rambling off here. And it looks like they're working, so let's get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun, deep in downtown Phoenix, Arizona. And today we are talking about being crossed. We have Alvin Bragg, who is breaking historical precedent and historical tradition by prosecuting a former president, prosecuting a current leading presidential candidate. And now he is really trying to create new historical precedent by telling Congress to get bent. And we know that Jim Jordan demanded to speak with Mark Pomerantz, a former prosecutor out of Manhattan, and Alvn Bragg sued Jim Jordan to stop that from happening. And we've got a couple orders to go through. The federal judge out of the Southern District of New York came out and gave Bragg a loss, gave him a big fat L right on the forehead. And then Alvin Bragg turned around and appealed it, and the Court of Appeals issued a ruling because the injunction and the subpoena were all related to today, this date, the 20th. So the question was, is Mark Pomerantz going to be showing up and complying with the subpoena? Well, we'll see. All of that in the first segment. And then, of course, we're going to turn our attention to the Proud Boys trial, day 59. And boy, Dominic Pezzola has been shining in this cross-examination. I did skim through a little bit of it this morning, and it looked like Dominic Pezzola was back on the stand for a direct examination. His testimony yesterday was quite compelling. A person who was reacting based on his training, serving the country. He was responding to the police shooting down at the people in the crowd. There was blood all over the place. He grabbed his shield, and now he's going to be up for cross-examination today. And we're going to see how that goes. But many people are looking at his testimony from yesterday, including Roger Parloff, and saying, hey, he's doing a pretty dang good job. So we're going to check in with that. We've got over 200 and something tweets from our friend Roger Parloff at our Parloff on Twitter, which is absolutely a good follow. So make sure you're following him if you want the latest on the trial. And so, my friends, as you can see, we have a lot to get to today. And if you want to be a part of the program, an amazing way to do that is by joining our community at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We do member-only streams, morning streams, and we have a great community of people who chat and share stories, and we comment, and it's just a lot of fun. And we'd love to see you at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And by the way, if you're a YouTube member, and we have many YouTube members as well, you can also become a YouTube member and you get those same morning streams. You get the same morning conversations, and our chat is very full now on YouTube as well, courtesy of a lot of people who are gifting memberships. And no matter where you join as a member, don't forget to grab the private Telegram group link, because when the show ends, the chat goes on and on, my friends, and that's where you chat with us. And of course, we've got a lot of work to do, and it's very important that we are healthy and nutrified with our friends over at Field of Greens, because fieldofgreens.com is the place to go for your nutritious superfoods. We all would like to lose some of those leftover pandemic pounds, right? How sick are you of all the ads for the weight loss pills and the fad diets? We've been there, we've done that, and we know that they just don't work. But you know what does? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day, it's no brainer. You do that and the weight would probably fall right off. But look, vegetables, not a fan, and fruit, who's got time to prepare that every day? Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula of very specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you can burn calories faster and lose weight a healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, you're going to look healthier and feel healthier fast, but the greater proof is going to come at your next checkup with your doctor. When they look at you and they say, wow, you've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. And so let's get you started. Go on over to fieldofgreens.com. Fieldofgreens.com. Save 15% with code Robert when you check out. They've got a lot of other things. They've got stuff for sleep, for athletes, for joints, all sorts of amazing products at fieldofgreens.com. Don't forget to use code Robert when you check out. The vegetables want to be eaten. You can get your real organic superfood and be bursting with green energy at fieldofgreens.com. Use code Robert at checkout. All right. And so, my friends, now let's get into the meat and potatoes on the day. Now that we're properly nutrified, Alvin Bragg blown out of a federal court in the Southern District of New York. The judge rejecting his request for an injunction. And there's been a lot of back and forth on this case. So let's get up to speed very briefly. Remember, Alvin Bragg is the Manhattan DA who is prosecuting Donald Trump. And as part of that prosecution, he brought in a lot of people onto his team, and they spent a lot of time, years, investigating this because they are obsessed. One of the people who was on the team is this guy, Mark Pomerantz. And he was very, very upset when Alvin Bragg declined to prosecute Donald Trump. There was a whole investigation. There were some decisions. There were some declinations. Mark Pomerantz was so upset about it. In fact, he wrote a book about it, and he went on 60 Minutes and was complaining to that person. I can't believe Alvin's doing this and this decision. It's a disgrace. My whole life is wrapped up in TDS. I need help, but I still want to prosecute Trump. And then suddenly, guess what happened? The prosecution came back after Donald Trump declared he was running for the presidency. And so we've got a lot of questions here about the decision-making process that was going on in the Manhattan DA's office. Was there a decision that was based in politics? Did something trigger after Donald Trump made the announcement? What was going on between Mark and other people there? And so remember, Mark Pomerantz is not in the Manhattan DA's office anymore. He's gone. He left. He resigned. He wrote this big hissy fit of a resignation letter, crying for like 3 pages. And it was a dramatic ordeal, so dramatic that they put him all over the news so he could cry about it to the rest of America. So he then leaves. And now, after this prosecution is breaking historical precedent, and we're dealing with Donald Trump now running for presidency under indictment, we had Congress ask questions about all of that nefariousness going on and all of this lawfare, all of this interference with federal elections. Remember, interference with democracy that was slapped on everybody's forehead in 2020, 2016. Every time it's useful against Donald Trump, they slap it on their foreheads. But here, when it's not useful, then Alvin Bragg is just a prosecutor. And this is about states' rights, and he needs to be insulated from congressional oversight. Give me a break. So Jim Jordan and the Republicans took over Congress. Then Jim Jordan said, all right, enough of this already. I'm tired of this. So he sent a subpoena to Mark Pomerantz, signified by this green arrow here. Very fancy today. And that arrow is the subpoena that went over to Mark Pomerantz. And so what happened is, and that was a lawful subpoena, it was ordering Mark Pomerantz to return back to Congress by 4/20 today. So Jordan sends that over to him. And we know there are all sorts of subpoenas that fly around here from Congress, and they're basically all valid. We read through many of them when Liz Cheney and crying Adam Kinzinger were just drafting them out from their typewriters and their crayons and coloring books. They were sending them all over the place, and everybody was complying with them, and the courts were upholding them. People got prosecuted from them. Shout out to Steve Bannon. So the list goes on and on. Congressional subpoenas, Congress can do whatever they want. It's Commerce Clause, federal elections, it's whatever, right? National security, all sorts of issues that they can just gobble up power. They do it every time they need to. So Jim Jordan sends the subpoena over to Mark Pomerantz. Alvn Bragg then files a request for an injunction, and he is now sending this request following these 2 green arrows, one naming Mark Pomerantz as a defendant, saying, Mark, you better not talk, buddy. Don't you dare talk. And also naming Jim Jordan, saying, Jim Jordan, you don't even have the authority. You've got no jurisdiction over any of this arena. And so sending complaints, basically telling both of them off limits, no go. And there was a back and forth that took place in the courts, and they were fighting back and forth. And we already read through Jim Jordan's response. The name of that video is Jim Jordan Obliterates Alvin Bragg, because it was excellent. And then it went into the Southern District of New York. The judge has considered everything and now issued the ruling. Here is what it says. The opinion and order coming out of the Southern District of New York in the case of Alvin Bragg, Manhattan DA. In the case against Jim Jordan and Mark Pomerantz, the former Manhattan DA, who has been subpoenaed by Congress, Jim Jordan, as the chairman on the Committee of the Judiciary, sent the subpoena this way to Mark Pomerantz. And so Bragg is now hitting both of them, saying you're both silenced. That's the request. The judge doesn't agree. Filed on April 19, 2023, this is the opinion and order denying the temporary restraining order. Sorry, Alvin. This is Congress. Who do you think you are, buddy? The judge writes, Mary K. Visikill. The request by Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg for a temporary restraining order, enjoining enforcement of the subpoena, stopping the subpoena, is denied. The subpoena, writes the judge, that came out of Jim Jordan's Congress was issued with valid legislative purpose in connection with congressional power to conduct investigations. The judge is doing the same thing that we saw a lot in the J6 stuff. It is not the role of the federal judiciary to dictate what legislation Congress may consider or how it should conduct deliberations in that connection. Mr. Pomerantz must appear for congressional deposition. Look at this. Look at this one. Look at this. No one is above the law. Oh, gosh, it's going to be a lot of fun to say that in the next, I don't know, decade or so. No one is above the law. Indeed. Yeah, and this is what the January 6th psychopaths were saying for a long time. Nobody's above the law. Nobody's saying he's above the law. We're saying there was no crime committed. Weirdos. Stop making something out of nothing. You're criminalizing conduct that your side has been doing for years. It's part of the standard playbook. So we're all about equal standards. You're right. Nobody is above the law. It's going to be a lot of fun when more subpoenas go out to everybody else. If the Republicans decide to grow a pair, and maybe they are, maybe this is the first budding of some activity, courtesy of Jim Jordan. Says on April 6th, the Committee of the Judiciary of the United States House of Representatives issued a subpoena to Mark Pomerantz, a former, look at this, pro bono employee. He was working for free. That's how much he hated Trump. I don't need any money. I am paid in rage. Just allow me to take my aggression out on him. I should be paying you, is something that I think he hinted at. He says that he was the Office of the District Attorney General attorney pro bono. He got a valid subpoena to appear. The subpoena does not request that Pomerantz produce any documents. We want your butt in the seat. The subpoena was accompanied by a letter from the committee, Jim Jordan. The letter requested Pomerantz appear due to his, quote, unique role as a special assistant in the district attorney's office leading the investigation into Trump. Jordan also explained that Pomerantz already discussed many of the topics relevant to this inquiry, and he published a whole book about it. Jordan notes that the district attorney's office of New York has also, in the letter, acknowledged it used federal forfeiture funds in its investigation of President Trump. There you go. It just basically automatic, right? Oh, federal funds. Okay, so therefore it's Congress's jurisdiction now. That's it. Easy. That's why they throw their money at everything. So they get authority to regulate all the things. And the committee that was considering potential legislative reforms, like broadening the existing statutory right of removal of certain criminal cases from state court to federal court. So there's a concept that exists. We have parallel systems of law, right? You have state courts, and you hear all the time about federal courts. And you see here, we cover both cases in both courts. And in the state courts, we often get footage of what's going on in there. See Derek Chauvin, see Kyle Rittenhouse, other cases we've covered live. But other cases in the federal courts, they operate under a whole different set of rules. And they just say, well, no footage at all. We see Ghislaine Maxwell. We see the Proud Boys, which we're covering now. So we have different rules. And one concept is the feds, in some cases, can just go in and take a state case and just gobble it up into federal court. It's called removing from state into federal court. And there's certain reasons and justifications for that happening. Sort of like in the movies, the feds come in, this is my investigation now. And they go, no, it's not. And jurisdiction, and the guy punches the other guy, and it's a big mayhem. Same thing here. But Congress is saying, well, hey, maybe there's an opportunity now if you're going to be interfering with political candidates running for office, that Congress decides we're going to remove those cases and pick them up into federal court. And as we know, Congress sets the jurisdiction of the federal courts. So there's all sorts of authority here, layers of authority. The book that Pomerantz wrote references Jim Jordan's letter. It's called People versus Donald Trump, an inside account by Pomerantz. Gosh. Its subtitle indicates the book recounts Pomerantz's insider insights, his mental impressions, and his front row seat to the investigation, and his deliberative process leading up to the prosecution of Trump. Here are some of the things that he talked about. This is the judge clarifying for us. The judge is writing, here's what I'm seeing, I'm ruling. Mark Pomerantz said the following things in his book. When he was in the district attorney's office, the case against Trump arising out of a payment was referred to as the zombie case. That's interesting. I'm sure Jim Jordan has questions about that. Why was this called the zombie case? Is it because it was crap and you guys kept it around, hanging around his neck for political purposes? Yeah. The facts surrounding the payments did not amount to much in legal terms. Paying hush money is not a crime. This is a quote from the book. Even if the payment was made to help an electoral candidate. So it says, hey, it's not a crime. Making hush money payment is not a crime. So why are you prosecuting Donald Trump? Valid question for Jordan. Creating false business records is only a misdemeanor under New York law. That's weird. Hey, Mark Pomerantz, the DA's office is saying it's a misdemeanor. Those statute of limitations, those expire in 2 years. We are now 6 years plus out from the allegations. And so how can you possibly prosecute this if you say that they're only misdemeanors? Why are they suddenly felonies now? You also said, and he's referencing his book. Look at all these. So he's actually referencing, and I think he's footnoting the book. Let's see where this footnote is coming from. Yeah. So he's got all the exhibits down there. Okay, so we'll deal with that when we get to the end. This, he says, there appeared to be no felony state crime in play. No felony. That's a statute of limitations issue. He also wrote, to charge Trump with something other than a misdemeanor, Bragg would have had to argue that the intent to commit or conceal a crime had converted into a felony. But he says no appellate court in New York had ever upheld or rejected this interpretation of the law. So that's weird. Why is Bragg prosecuting this if that is the law? According to a prosecutor who worked in the same office that ultimately led to prosecution of Trump. This judge is quoting Pomerantz. He says that the charge is ambiguous. Says there was a big risk that felony charges would be dismissed before a jury could even consider them. Yeah, we're talking about that now. One of the biggest justifications for the dismissal is very likely going to be the statute of limitations, which we talked about up here. Says the Trump investigation should have been handled by the DOJ, not Bragg, obvious. Federal prosecutors would not have to torture or massage statutory language like we would have to do, right? They're twisting this thing into making it into something. Here, this emphasis was added by the judge. This was in Pomerantz's book. The same guy who's crying about Trump not being prosecuted says federal prosecutors previously looked into the Clifford hush money payment and did not move forward with the prosecution. All stuff that we have categorized. There is a statute of limitations issue. We know that. Numerous prosecutors were skeptical about the prosecution and were referred to as conscientious objectors, right? Divisions within the agency. The invoices and the request for payments were made throughout 2017, after Trump's inauguration as president. And the team also discussed Michael Cohen's credibility as saying, yeah, it's one of the difficulties of the case. At one point, the judge says, Bragg commented the following. Bragg commented that he could not see a world in which Manhattan would indict Trump and call Cohen as a witness. Wow, that's a pretty big statement. You got to imagine Congress has a lot of questions about that one. What changed, Alvin? Your former prosecutor who was working for free dedicated to this has said you previously said nothing would come of this, but then Trump declared, and now here we are. What's going on? The judge says, While Pomerantz acknowledged Bragg's right to make prosecutorial decisions, he viewed himself as more experienced and more qualified than Bragg. Oh, wow. That's kind of racist. Why? More experienced and qualified? Does Alvin Bragg know that? Does Letitia James know that? That's racist behavior. Pomerantz then makes a point that he was finishing law school when Alvin was a toddler. Oh, wow. And that's also, I don't know, what is that? Like ageist or something? Gosh, I guess. Wow. So Pomerantz resigned, and he wrote that in his book. I don't endorse it. Pomerantz resigned from his pro bono position at New York when it became clear that Trump would not get indicted. Pomerantz told the DA that he was responsible for a grave failure of justice because he would not authorize Trump's indictment. Ultimately, in 2023, Bragg did, of course, indict President Trump, bringing back the zombie case and the theory back from the dead. So Jordan, the judge continues, Jordan and the committee first tried to acquire information from Pomerantz voluntarily. They sent letters, and we've seen the same game played. Send a letter. Hey, we just have some voluntary questions. Why don't we just come over and meet and confer and all the things? But on April 11th, Bragg, one of 5 district attorneys, filed a 50-page complaint in this court, and they named Jordan specifically and the committee and Pomerantz. Bragg filed a motion seeking a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction, stopping Jim Jordan from enforcing the subpoena and enjoining Pomerantz from complying with the subpoena. Okay, so Jordan, you can't ask for it, and Pomerantz, you can't give it to him. The government responded, the Congress responded back to Bragg. Now, the judge writes this. Says, the first 35 pages of Alvin Bragg's complaint have little to do with the subpoena at issue, and they are nothing short of a public relations tirade against the former president and current presidential candidate, Donald Trump. Love that. It was. We read through it. The same is true of the vast majority of the exhibits accompanying the Boutros Declaration. The complaint acknowledges that Manhattan used federal forfeiture funds in investigating Trump. You acknowledge that you used the funds. And you also concede, Alvy, that the district attorney's office was aware that Pomerantz was writing a book about it. And you even asked to review a manuscript before it was published. Pomerantz said no. The judge says, at the heart of this, Bragg, your complaint, it simply includes two requests for declaratory and injunctive relief directed at a congressional inquiry. The judge says, look, the reality is that as framed, this action is merely a motion to quash a subpoena dressed up in a lawsuit. Oh, man. Calling him out. The motion for a temporary restraining order was filed without notice to defendants and before defendants were even served with this complaint. The rules say that any party seeking an ex parte order, meaning an order without notifying the other side, must submit an affidavit of good and sufficient reasons why a procedure other than by notice of motion is necessary, and stating whether a previous application for relief has been made. And none of that was submitted here. So accordingly, the court issued an order declining to enter the order to show cause, directing service on the defendants, not only of the motion, but also of the complaint, so that the defendants could be heard. Jordan and the judiciary filed a response. They say Bragg's not going to succeed on the merit. They say Jordan and the committee are immune from lawsuit, speech and debate clause. They also say the subpoena is totally valid. We have perfect legislative purpose. 1, protect former presidents and presidential candidates from politically motivated prosecutions by district attorneys all throughout the country. And they say that this could have an impact about how cases could be removed from state level to federal court, which we talked about. They also have the right to investigate funds. Now, Pomerantz also filed a response, which we have not read. He describes himself as a nominal defendant. It says, the judge writes, it appears that Pomerantz is content to largely allow Alvin Bragg to speak to him. The judge continues, saying the day before the scheduled hearing, Alvin Bragg filed an 11th hour reply brief, not authorized by this court's order, given the time frame in which this motion was filed. Says Alvin largely rehashes the same arguments made in the first brief and finally addresses the speech and debate clause. Says Alvin's brief was accompanied by a supplemental declaration attaching 16 largely irrelevant exhibits. The judge, what are you attaching this crap for? It consists of a hodgepodge of social media postings, news articles, television interviews, pleadings from unfounded lawsuits, and a transcript from the arraignment in the Trump prosecution. The judge is like, what are you giving me all this garbage for? The court is also in receipt of several unsolicited amicus briefs. People are filing motions saying, we're friends of the court, and we want this to go this way and this to go that way. And the judge says, I'm not inclined to hear any of that. Says an assemblage of former members of Congress, former prosecutors, former government attorneys, and former academics filed an amicus brief, all with the consent of Alvn Bragg. So Alvin Bragg's on his phone. He's like, oh man, I'm in deep doo-doo over here. Who can I call? And just like the Democrats like to do, they like to create lists of people who are idiots, and then they all sign a document saying a thing. And they like, look at my list. We saw this with the Hunter Biden saga with those 51 plus so-called intelligence experts who are not experts and not intelligent. They all signed this thing saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation. Obviously, that was true. So the same type of tactic is here. They think that their lists give them power or something because they argue by appeal to authority. We've got science. We've got justice. We've got all of these things. So all of these idiots, former government lawyers, former prosecutors, they've got nothing better to do. They just forward emails to each. Can you sign this thing? Can you sign this thing? Can you sign this thing? Gosh, idiots. So they all sent in a bunch of letters, and this judge is saying, why did you send me unsolicited amicus brief, morons? Says the amici, the friends of the court, argue that the committee lacked authority to issue the subpoena. Judge says it's not their opinion, and they echo Bragg's refrain that the subpoena is going to interfere with an ongoing criminal prosecution brought by a state prosecutor. A separate group of former state and federal idiot prosecutors filed amicus briefs, again with the consent of Bragg. He's like, yeah, file it again. Send the list. Did John sign it? No. Did Jim? Get him to sign it. These amici assert, and I honestly, these people are doing this, right? They're having Zoom meetings. They're like, I'm not joking. Like, yes, we're joking about it here, but this is also real. Remember that after the 2020 election, they revealed to us how they did it, how we did the thing. And they said that they organized everything in the Time magazine piece. And they had they were holding weekly briefings, and they were organizing all the teams together, rapid response groups, and all this stuff. They've got whole teams built out around these prosecutions and around these cases. So here they are doing that. Another batch of federal prosecutors filed another brief. And they say that these amici, this seriously challenges the prosecutorial process. All right. So the judge says, look, Bragg and his two sets of amici attack what they describe as federal interference in this prosecution. There is no question, says the judge, that New York is a sovereign state in our federal system, that it has authority to enforce its criminal laws through its local prosecutors, and says the court is mindful of potential federalism concerns, the separation between the feds and the states. And now Alvin Bragg is suddenly a sovereign states' rights person, miraculously. It's amazing what happens. However, the court rejects the premise that the committee's investigation will interfere with the prosecution. The subpoena of Pomerantz, who is a private citizen and a public commentator at the time that Bragg indicted Trump, will not prevent or impede the criminal prosecution that's currently pending in New York at all. So they go through some analysis. The judge says a threshold issue. Does Bragg have standing? The judge says, yeah, Bragg has standing. He can file a lawsuit. But Bragg is not entitled to a temporary restraining order. In the Second Circuit, we have certain rules that govern the issuance of restraining orders. And in order to do so, you've got to establish a likelihood of success on the merits. But here, congressional committees do have constitutional authority to conduct investigations. The House has the power to legislate. The power is not limitless, but they may conduct inquiries into certain things, of course. The court finds there are several valid purposes here: federal funds, forfeiture funds, congressional authority, all of the things we've already touched upon. They are detailing for us in a little bit more, with more detail. Here, the subpoena also does not implicate sovereign interest of New York. It's not undermining New York. This guy's a private citizen, not even involved with the office anymore. So you guys are free to continue your historic prosecution of Donald Trump. Jim Jordan is free to ask Pomerantz about the prosecution. The subpoena is only asking for Pomerantz's testimony. They don't want any documents. And as we scroll down, it says, finally, Pomerantz is not involved in the prosecution in any way. So we're going to see that, there may be something, a difference, something to distinguish if Bragg is actually subpoenaed, right? That would be a big difference. All of these arguments would then be moot at that point. Jim Jordan has already sent a letter to Alvin Bragg, but no subpoenas have gone out to anybody other than Pomerantz. So in this case, yeah, Pomerantz is not involved. So the pending prosecution will move forward regardless. He wasn't even employed at the office when Trump got indicted. So it wouldn't impact the prosecution. But what happens if this goes over to Alvin Bragg? And Alvin Bragg actually gets the prosecution. So let's see where this wraps up as we scroll down to a little bit more concluding language. We find the judge carries us out and says, for the foregoing reasons, the motion for a temporary restraining order enjoining the subpoena to depose Mr. Pomerantz and stopping Pomerantz from appearing is denied. Judge says, in our federalist system, elected state and federal actors sometimes engage in political dogfights. Bragg complains of political interference in his case, but Bragg does not operate outside of the political arena. Judge says Bragg is presumptively acting in good faith. That said, he is an elected prosecutor in New York, and he's got constituents, some of whom wish to see Bragg wield the force of law against Trump and the current Republican presidential nomination candidate. Jim Jordan, in turn, has initiated a political response to what he and some of his constituents view as a manifest abuse of power and nakedly political prosecution funded in part with federal money that has the potential to interfere with the exercise of presidential duties and also with an upcoming federal election. The court does not endorse either side's agenda, but the sole question before the court today is whether Alvin Bragg has the legal basis to quash a congressional subpoena that came with a valid legislative purpose, which is such a low bar. The judge says he does not. The parties are encouraged to speak to one another to reach a mutually agreeable compromise regarding how the deposition of Mr. Pomerantz will proceed, but it will proceed. This court will retain jurisdiction over this dispute and any ancillary claims arising out of the inquiry by the committee related to the use of the federal funds in a manner that may influence the 2024 election. Judge Visakill says, in other words, Braggs may not file successive proceedings under a different index number if and when the committee in fact issues another subpoena that he finds objectionable, or if there are issues with respect to the Pomerantz depot. Judge says the parties are hereby ordered to file a joint status report within 30 days of this order. So ordered. New York, April 19th. Judge Mary K. Visakill. Beautiful. So this closing is the judge saying, I'm going to hang on to this little predicament here, Alvin. If you get another subpoena and you file a motion to quash that subpoena, whatever's going on with any of these subpoenas from Congress on this issue, they're in my court now. I'll be taking control of them. Thanks. Because it's Congress. And we have a separation of powers problem. If the judges can just tell Congress what to do, we learned this back during January 6th, and they wielded that power like maniacs. And we're going to see what happens to the fabric of this country now that they've crossed that bridge. But the Republicans can do the same thing, and they can wield the power of Congress just like Liz Cheney did and go beat up whoever they want about it, peacefully and politically in court. But this is a great ruling from the judge, and the judge was very smart on this. I mean, she was even calling him out, saying that he was filing this as he filed this inappropriately. He should have responded in a different way. He filed a lawsuit instead of a motion to quash a subpoena because he was trying to be sneaky about this, and says, if you're trying to be sneaky again, Alvy, it's coming to my court. I know what you're doing. Don't try it again. Mark Pomerantz is sitting for a subpoena. Any problems with that, you let me know. So we'll see where that goes. It's going to be a lot of fun to see what happens. Now, that's provided that this does not come back down on appeal, because the Alvn Bragg has already submitted this on appeal. Remember that the order in the subpoena was that Mark Pomerantz show up on the 20th. That is today. So as soon as that order came down, Alvn Bragg flipped right around and filed an appeal. And this is what it looks like. The judge issued an order and says, all right, now this is pretty normal, right? Alvn Bragg and Mark Pomerantz, they both appeal from a district court order, the one that we just read, denying the injunction. The subpoena return date is today, April 20th, 2023. So a court of appeals stopped this before he had to show up. They say appellants have filed an emergency motion seeking an interim administrative stay and a stay pending appeal of the return date of the subpoena. Of course, Jim Jordan opposes that. The Court of Appeals said it is hereby ordered that an administrative stay of the return date of the subpoena is granted, so that a 3-judge panel may consider the motion seeking a stay pending the appeal of the order. The order reflects no judgment regarding the merits of the parties' positions. All right. So this is basically just a temporary hold, and this happens regularly. You know, we see this all the time. The appeal tolls the imposition of the lower court's ruling generally, and then it is carried over and dealt with later. Here, the court is ordering the appellee's paper in response to the motion are due on April 21st, tomorrow at 3 p.m. The reply is due April 22nd at 3 p.m. The clerk is directed to calendar the motion for the first available panel, right? So this is moving very fast. We have the 21st is a Friday, the 22nd is a Saturday. Then we'll probably be back on Monday for first available panel. I don't know when the full court panel will be, but next week maybe. Is there a panel? We don't know. But if there is, then the subpoena might be deemed to be valid. We might have Mark Pomerantz going over to the Judiciary Committee maybe by the end of next week or soon thereafter, provided the Court of Appeals agrees with the lower level district court. And I think that they will. The higher court may not agree with some of the language in there. No one is above the law and some of that characterization, but it is Congress, and Congress, as we've seen here on this channel, has had a lot of precedent in getting what they want, even in spite of what we think are egregious requests and egregious claims. They got it anyways. So, of course, a lot of activity on this. Alvn Bragg is going to continue to fight for his survival now that he has crossed the Rubicon. He's going to have a lot of support as he does it. You saw that Pomerantz has all of his federal prosecutor buddies all sending in letters as amici of the court. The judge, I don't even want to hear it. Take your lists, go to your cocktail parties, and leave the rest of us alone. Of course, we'll continue to cover it. Thank you for liking this video, wherever it is you're watching. Thank you for subscribing. We're going to continue to cover all of the Trump prosecutions and more. and we'll see you on the next one. So now let's turn our attention over to an explosive day. Proud Boys trial, day 59. Dominic Pezzola still on the stand. And yesterday he was giving us his testimony. His attorney was leading a direct examination. And today he's back on the stand. And a lot of the reaction to what he was describing yesterday was that he was very powerful. He was very persuasive, and that it carried a lot of weight. And so to jump into this, let's turn our attention over to our friend Roger Parloff. And Roger Parloff, of course, you can follow at @rparloff on Twitter. Here's how it starts. Day 59, Proud Boys trial. Live tweet from Roger Parloff, Dominic Pezzola back on the stand. And Roger's there. He's watching this, and he tells us, like it or not, Pezzola has been a strong witness so far. We saw that yesterday. He was explaining his background, his history, why he was feeling the way that he was, why his reactions were what they were. He claimed minimal contacts with other defendants, says he went on autopilot mode. He was a Marine infantryman. His training and survival instincts kicked in as the police were lobbing rounds and flashbangs near him. Last night, Carmen Hernandez filed a motion to strike. We're going to get, I think, to the motions tomorrow. Says that there was a motion to strike because she got ambushed with those videos yesterday. And we'll fast forward that part and check into that when we do a motion summation. So there are other videos that are being shared. Yesterday, we talked about this image. This was allegedly Zachary Real. Zachary Real, according to the government, in this photograph was supposedly spraying pepper spray towards the police. And we saw yesterday that Ray Epps was standing there right next to him. And that was a subject of Carmen's motion to strike. And so we're fast forwarding through some of the initial filings, and Judge Kelly is now on the bench. The judge says, all right, well, we don't have the jury until a couple hours, so I want to address a couple things. He is now ruling on a very important issue that we talked about here. There was a Court of Appeals ruling about the question about obstruction and this word corruptly. How do we interpret the phrase corruptly? If the defense is victorious in this code, this criminal charge that is brought under 18 U.S. Code 1512C2, obstruction, if you accept the concurring opinions standard on this, all of those charges for all of the J6ers get dismissed. But it's not defined because the opinion was basically trash. They didn't give us clarity on it. So the judge is not bound to interpret it that way. So the question was, is if you interpret corruptly one way, the charges get dismissed. If you interpret it another way, then they stay. And loosely speaking, it was about the intent and about what you were manipulating. You know, you were having to corrupt the thing that was going on versus a lower level standard of just physically being there equals corruption. In other words, destroying documents and things like that. So the Federal Court of Appeals in a footnote suggested that the concurring opinion defined corruption strangely, but Judge Kelly said, I'm rejecting all of that. I'm not allowing that interpretation. In any case, I'm not going to use it. And it's not going to dismiss the counts. Okay, so all of those counts are going to stick around. That's exactly what we expected, of course. The judge said there was another thing I need to raise with the parties under seal. So the monitors go off, and now we're back. Jury is getting called in. Judge tells the jury, whoa, we might have closing arguments tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen. And testimony begins. Dominic Pezzola is back on the stand. His attorney, Stephen Metcalf, resumes the direct. Pezzola's in court, dark suit, dark blue shirt, dark blue tie. Defense attorney asks, Dominic, before you hired me, did you meet with the FBI? He says, yeah, a couple times. I met with them March 2021. Shortly after I was first arrested, I was incarcerated. I was actually in jail. So I met with them twice. The first meeting, they asked me to tell them everything. So I did. I wasn't in the organization for more than a month. I was 100% truthful during that first meeting. I was being led to believe that the FBI thought I was holding back. I felt like my conditions at jail wouldn't improve unless I gave them more. He said, my conditions were extremely bad when I was there. My conditions extremely bad. So I don't know what he said. Were bad or are bad. My conditions extremely bad. My conditions are extremely bad. He's still in custody, but you're not really supposed to talk about that. The jury isn't really supposed to know that. So the defense says, Dominic, did you lie a second time? And he says, well, should I get into the conditions first? Should I explain what was going on? And he probably says no. He says, just tell me about the meeting. He says, yes, I did lie at the second meeting. The story was that when Biggs was near the peace circle, a man with a red hat came up to him and put his arm around him. The story circling was Biggs had a gun on him, and he told the other man to go attack the gate. He said, when I was talking to the FBI, that was a total fabrication. And Biggs is sitting right there. And Biggs is like, you lied about me, bro? Biggs had a gun on him, and you told the other man to attack the gate. I totally made it up. Why'd you lie? Dominic says, conditions in the DC jail are pretty grim. They call it the DC gulag. I was in solitary. I was confined in a cell for 23 hours a day. On top of that, my medical history, I was injured in my 30s. My spine was crushed. They put a titanium rod and screws in my back, and the doctor put me on Cymbalta. Makes you deal with the pain better, but on the second pain medication I'm on a second pain medication for erosion of my esophagus. And so when I got to DC jail, they completely cut me off of my medicine. Being completely cut off from a psych medication like that is catastrophic. I was having some serious withdrawals. I was dizzy. I was lethargic. I couldn't sleep. I could have a stroke. I also had acid reflux really bad. When I went into incarceration, I was in there with a bone spur in my foot, which needed surgery, and that was ignored too. So now I've got permanent damage in my foot, and I wasn't allowed to shave or have a haircut for over a year. Says COVID restrictions also prevented me from having my attorney come in. Objection stricken. Defense says, did you feel pressured to lie to the FBI, Dominic? Objection leading. He says, absolutely. I felt I was being stricken, manipulated, and coerced. So Dominic answers it anyways. Objection sustained. He answers it anyways. Yeah, I was. I did feel pressure. Absolutely, he says. Absolutely, I was pressured. Objection, Judge. Sustained. Strike that. At a third meeting, Dominic says, after I told them that story, told that over to the FBI, I was transferred to a place that was a lot better. See how that works? So these feds, man, they will treat you like crap until you crack. Then they start moving you to a better place. The judge strikes that. That's stricken. I don't like that sound. I don't like how that sounds. Wow, no, I can't believe they would do that. Strike that. Judge says, the question was what happened at the meeting, okay? Not about what the answer was. And the Pezzola says, I was just trying to explain. He's like, Your Honor, I was just trying to explain. I was trying to answer the question. Defense says, well, what happened at the new facility that led to the third meeting? Objection, relevance. They go up for a sidebar now. They come back. Defense says, what happened after the second meeting that led you to believe that led to a third meeting? Objection, sustained. They're really trying not to get into the conditions. The judge does not want the jurors to hear what a rotten hellhole they have been putting these people in. Defense says, what happened at the third meeting now? Tightening up the questions because he keeps getting objections. FBI, Pezzola says, the FBI asked if I was still interested in cooperating, and I said, absolutely not. And I retracted the lie. Any other reason you told the lie? Treatment and conditions. Said it was akin to being tortured. I had a conversation with one of the COs, and I asked him, objection, non-responsive. They want the jurors to think that, it's like a club. They go golfing and frolicking around and play polo and stuff at these jails. Did the situation get better after you told a lie? Great question. Pezzola says, yeah, drastically. They moved me to a new facility, much better. I was able to see my family. I was able to get healthy food. I had no problem getting medication. Also having, he says, I'll leave that one out. And I was only with you for the third meeting, right? So the defense attorney saying they only let me in that third time. He says, right. Defense asks, Dominic, if Officer Odie was here right now, and remember, Officer Odie is the person who he took the shield from. Dominic, if the shield officer, Officer Odie, was here right now, what would you say to him? Objection, sustained. Anything else, Dominic, you want this jury to know about? Objection, sustained. Dominic, if you could pay for that window, would you pay for it? Objection, sustained. No further questions. Carmen Hernandez is up. She says, all right, Dominic, hey, after January 6th, you said that you went to Philadelphia. Did you or did you not at any time meet with my client, Mr. Zachary Real? Dominic says, no, I never actually went into Philly. I had no idea who Mr. Real was. And you also mentioned having a radio in DC. Yeah. Did those connect to my client, Zachary Real? To my knowledge, the radio I had only connected to objection, sustained. Who else had access to the radio? Myself, Matthew Green, Aaron, Arthur. Did Real have access? Well, we were only on our channel. No further questions. Defense attorney for Biggs is up now. And Biggs is represented by Norm Pattis. Norm Pattis, of course, is representing Biggs. Biggs is the person who was lied about by Dominic. So he is now asking him about this. Oh, you lied about my client, huh? So what did you tell the FBI? I told them a story I heard. That Biggs had a gun at the Peace Circle, and when a person with the red hat came up to him, Ryan Samsel, who was whispered into his ear by Ray Epps again, Ryan Samsel, Biggs told him he had a gun and insulted his manhood and urged him to breach the barrier. And so who told you that false story? Was it a rioter? Yeah, it was Ryan Samsel himself. And he was in the next cell at the jail. Ryan Samsel, the guy with the red hat, was in the jail, told that to Dominic Pezzola. Dominic Pezzola told that lie to the feds in order to get better treatment because they had him in solitary 23 hours a day, withdrawing from his medication, on all sorts of pain, torturing the man until he gave them something useful. Then they let him out. That's in America right now, in your Department of Justice, in the FBI, in Washington, D.C. Judge excuses us all for a break. Now, Judge Kelly is back on the bench. Pezzola is back on the stand. Government prosecutor Knierson at the podium, ready to do the cross. Dominic Pezzola is seated. Prosecutor says, Mr. Pezzola, how long were you in the Marines? 6 years. And you left when? 2004. And the Marines shaped your character? Yeah. Turned you into the man you are today? Partly. The Marine Corps teaches loyalty, always faithful. So yeah. They teach about commitment. Yeah. And honor, right? Yeah. And how to be a leader, don't they? He says, yeah, how to lead and how to follow. In the military, the chain of command is important, right, Dominic? Yeah. And you work with fellow Marines to accomplish a goal. Yeah. And adapt to changing situations, right? Yes. And it's true, even if you couldn't get a hold of higher ups, you have to adapt, don't you? Yes. After you left the military, you were dedicated to accomplishing your goals. He says, my dedication was to my family and my business. And part of that was honoring your commitments. Yes. Do a job well done. Get done on time and be committed to finishing the job, right? Yes. Your time in the military had ended in 2004? Yes. And you never served in law enforcement, right? No. No, I joined the Marines thinking I might join law enforcement. But you were never PO'd in Rochester or anywhere else. No. You were never a police officer in Rochester or anywhere else. No. You worked as an electrician, right? Yeah. And then flooring, right? Yeah. And then anything else? A couple security jobs. But you've never seen overseas in military to, you were never sent overseas in the military to guard an embassy. No, I was severely injured before. And you were never stationed to guard a government building during a protest. It was actually, yeah, I was actually. After 9/11, there was an armed security patrol at my base. Prosecutor's like, "Pfft." Prosecutor says, in the Marines, you were counseled 9 times for missing drills. They got his Marine records. These guys. You missed drills in the military, didn't you? You little tardy insurrectionists. Yeah. And you're not trained on how law enforcement should use force, right? Well, I have some basic military police enforcement training. He said we'd have platoon level job training, tutorials, lectures, nothing too in depth. And so from 1998 to 2004, says the prosecutor, you would sometimes get handouts, to know what to expect if a situation should arise. And he says, yeah. So handouts, but no actual experience. Dominic says, yeah. And you said you learned honor, but it's not honorable to accuse someone of something they didn't do, right? Talking about the lie about Biggs. And says, when you spoke to the FBI in February or March, you had counsel, right? Yeah. And you were held at Central Treatment Facility in DC? Yeah. And that's a separate building from DC jail. Well, it's connected somehow, he says. So you met with the FBI in March 2021? Yes. And you were moved to a new facility after that, right? In February, you were moved. Yeah. So March 2021 to February 2022, before you were moved. But you believed you were moved because you were cooperating. He says, yes. Yeah, the whole cooperation structure was based on that lie. Due to the evidence they received, they knew. It wasn't true, but they still wanted me to tell the lie. This is good testimony. I mean, this is the prosecutor's trying to pin him down on it. No, they told me to lie. It's all the same. And you're under oath today, right? Yeah. The FBI uses info from interviews to decide whether a crime is committed. He says, yeah. I'm aware the FBI often lies to people to get what they want. That's all I'm aware of. Yeah. That's true. And they encourage human sources to do the lying for them too. I'm aware the FBI often lies to people to get what they want. Prosecutor says, so you're refusing to answer my question. Gosh, this person says, I'm not aware. Look, I don't know how the FBI operates. This is my first involvement with law enforcement in my whole life. They say, when you met with the FBI, you were informed that they were conducting an investigation, trying to get control of this. Yeah. And when you met with the FBI a second time, you thought you had to tell them something to get out of your situation? Is that what you're saying? Yes. Yes, but I thought these people were creating a story about me too, and they were going to throw me under the bus. So you were aware that whatever you gave the FBI would lead them to decide whether to arrest someone else, right? So I don't know. I have no idea what they use their info for. But you said you saw a group, including Biggs, sitting here at the table, was harassing a black man wearing a BLM shirt. He said, I thought I said a white man wearing a BLM shirt. Well, you said you saw Samsel come up to defend that boy. You saw Samsel push Biggs. There was a scuffle, is what you said. Then Biggs lifted his shirt and showed a 9mm Beretta. I think this is the prosecutor reading probably from an interview. You said you ushered a kid with the BLM shirt out of the area. You said then Samsel came back. You said then Biggs accused him of being Antifa. You said then Biggs told Samsel that if he wasn't Antifa, that he should push him down the barriers. You said that, right? All of that's in the interview. Dominic says, yeah, I mean, the story's so old, I don't even remember. But none of what we just went over here was accurate, was it? And Dominic's like, what? What is this? He says, yeah, like I said, I was led to believe that my conditions were being controlled by the FBI. My conditions were being controlled by the FBI. A corrections officer told me that. So Dominic Pezzola is sitting there rotting in a DC jail. The FBI is doing their inquisition into the insurrection that they were highly involved in. And they are telling corrections officers, who are then telling Dominic Pezzola, that your conditions are being controlled by the FBI. He's saying, man, can I get some medicine? Can I get some food? Can I get to talk to my family? Can I get my lawyer in here? Can I just have humane treatment? This is cruel and unusual to lock somebody in custody for 24 hours a day, 23 hours a day, excuse me. He's got back pain. He's got all sorts of splints and he's broken, shattered this, that, and the other thing. Can I get some help? Sorry, man. The FBI says this is your situation. I can't do anything for you. Maybe talk to him. Maybe tell him something and things will improve. And guess what? They did. So they don't like that this testimony is coming out. This is pretty damaging. I mean, if you're a juror and you're in DC, many of them are probably, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt at the current time, but they're DC jurors. We sort of can predict how this is going to go. But if you're sitting there, right, this is pretty compelling stuff. Corrections officer told me that I would only get a better position if I gave them something. The FBI was in control. So the prosecutor says, so no FBI agent told you your conditions were connected to what you said, right? So nobody from the FBI, the Bureau, told you that, right? Like our people didn't do it. He says, no, but the reason I said that is because I asked a corrections officer, Corporal Hayes. I said, hey, Corporal Hayes, can I get some help, man? He said, he's got a name here. Dominic Pezzola's got a name. He said conditions would improve when the FBI said so. Corporal Hayes is the same guy who beat up Ryan Samsel. Did you see Corporal Hayes beat Samsel? Had to be him. He was the only one there. You falsely incriminated someone else, though, right? I don't recollect. So you told the FBI Biggs committed a crime he didn't commit, right? Yeah. Oh, he says, oh, yeah, I did say that. So you're willing to put other people in jeopardy if it served your own objectives. Okay, so Dominic, he's trying to make Dominic out to be a liar. He's saying, hey, Dominic, you're lying. Corporal Hayes never told you anything about corrections improving your conditions. Our FBI agents are very good. They're very smart, okay? Their mothers like them very much. There's all sorts of pictures on their refrigerators at home. And so we would never do anything like that. And nobody ever said anything like that to you from the FBI, right? He says, no, Corporal Hayes did, a corrections officer, the same guy who beat up Ryan Samsel. And now the juror's like, what? People are getting beat up by Corporal Hayes? A corrections officer? But you didn't see Corporal Hayes beat up Samsel. It had to be him. So the prosecutor says, but you're kind of a liar. You just make up crimes. And he says, well, I mean, I did make up the one about Biggs. Prosecutor says, and you also smashed Capitol windows with a stolen riot shield. Objection, that's sustained. That's very argumentative, right? Smashed Capitol windows with a riot shield. So he asks it again and deletes the word stolen. You see how that worked? Smash the Capitol windows with a stolen riot shield. Objection sustained. Smash the Capitol windows with a riot shield. Objection overruled. Question comes in now. Yes, I admitted I had. It was one pain under $1,000 and it's a misdemeanor, not even a felony, prosecutor. But that video got a lot of attention for you, didn't it, Dominic? I couldn't tell you. I don't know. And you went on the run after January 6th? He says, yeah, I did. I needed to buy some time. And that was until Tarrio reached out to you to state that you were not with the Proud Boys. Says, I believed he messaged Bertino to say that. It was his voice, but it was forwarded to me. So Enrique Tarrio disavows. Prosecutor's going on. He says, now, you were not a National Proud Boys leader. Correct. You were not an MOSD leader. Nope. You were not in the MOSD Zoom call. Nope. You were not in the elders. Nope. You didn't meet any of your defendants here? Tell court? He says, none of them, except kind of Tario. I can explain that. And so you were not privy to the leaders' discussions, right? Correct. I was in the chat. I was in the MOSD late on 1/2/21. And so until then, you were not privy to what was in those chats, right? Yes, correct. I was in the chat late 1/2/21 and didn't know anything that came in before that date. Now, this testimony here, I just have to pause, is really good for the defense. I can't believe the prosecutor was asking all of this stuff. You were in a leader. No, not a leader here, not on the Zoom call, not in the elders, not in any of these other things, and only met the defendants in court and only kind of knew Tario, kind of. What kind of conspiracy is this? These people they don't even know each other. Weird testimony. So, for the prosecutor to be eliciting here. So I was in the chat late 1/2, and before then you didn't hear anything about it. Says, one of the first things you testified to, Dominic, was that you were testifying that there was no conspiracy. And he says, yeah, that's what I said between me and those guys. I didn't even know them. Now, you said you didn't know them, but why was your phone taken on January 9th? He says, yeah, one of the guys let me and I let it happen. And his testimony, if you remember, he was freaked out. So his buddies were helping. Give me your phone, take this, and they were like cleaning him up and getting him back on track. He was freaked. Prosecutor says, all right, I want to go back to 2020. You said before COVID, you were not into politics, not too much. But once COVID hit, you became consumed by it. I became consumed by the policies destroying my business. COVID destroyed a lot of people's businesses and wrecked a lot of lives and caused a lot of people to be in a different mind frame and act out of character. It was destroying his business and many others. And by what was happening to innocent protesters. Prosecutor says, so you came down in November and you wanted to meet the Proud Boys, and right? He says, yeah, I met several. I got in contact with the central chapter. I did some vetting. I went to a protest in Hudson Valley. A couple other people went. Reaper went. William Pepe was there. Merckx went. Hooks was there. Went to a rally in Buffalo. Pezzola got in a fight there. There was another meetup. Prosecutor asks Dominic, when did you get your second degree? After December. And you testified that the degrees went by seniority? He says, well, it was more like a status symbol, kind of how long you've been around. But you told the FBI in the first meeting that the fourth degree required combat, right? That's what I believed then. I learned there are other ways now. So it's fair to say that prior to February 2021, you thought combat was required to become a fourth. So you see what he's doing? He's thinking maybe he was going to go and get his fourth degree on January 6th. Says most people seem to get it through some kind of altercation with Antifa. And so that's what you understood from November to January, right? So before January 6th up until after January 6th, you thought violence would get you your fourth degree. And he says, yeah, I just assumed that was the most common way. You wanted to impress national leadership. He says, no. He scoffs, no. And the defense attorney says, Your Honor, can you please have a word with Knierson? Asks to have word with Knierson. So I don't like the tone here might be bad. There might be a tone problem. There might be some sort of body language. Pattis is Your Honor, something's going on. Prosecutor continues. So you followed Enrique Tarrio on Parler, right? Yeah. And Biggs and Nordine? Yeah. And yeah, Nordine later. Yeah. I want to show you one of these Parler posts. Apparently, they're in here. Somebody said, I'll be picking up my first degree this weekend, and I couldn't be prouder to stand with you in DC. Uhuru boss on a Twitter post. Prosecutor asks, so when you saw Enrique Tarrio in his speech, you tried to get the best seat in the House? Yeah, I always do. And you wore a shirt at that rally, an FAFO shirt, which means, you know what it means. And you mugged for the cameras, didn't you? Like that mean mug, And we use them on the thumbnails here on the channel a lot, that mean mug. You mugged for the cameras, didn't you? He says, no, scoffing laugh. Now shows an exhibit, probably one of the photos. Now he's got the mug with the cigar, probably the same one that we have on our thumbnail. Yeah, no, I wouldn't call that mugging. I was staring up at a helicopter. I thought it might be a Marine and I had smoke in my eyes. That's why he's doing this. Says, this was a rally of like over 1,000 people, though, wasn't it? Yeah. And you marched up front with Nordine and Tarrio? Yeah, I was a first degree. A guy in my chapter grabbed me, told me he wanted me up front for this picture, right? Well, no, not specifically for the picture. But here's another photo of you and Tarrio. And you guys were taking other photos, weren't you, as well? Says, at a separate time, you marched with Tarrio and Real. He said, well, it fluctuates. We're all standing around. So I had no idea who Real was. You see another photograph. They're marching down. And another photograph. Says, and that's you up front with Tarrio and Real? He says, yeah, that's correct. So it's apparent to you in December who was in charge. Dominic says, well, I wouldn't say in charge. I mean, every chapter is autonomous. There's really no structure. Did you perceive Tarrio as one of the people in charge? He says, yeah, correct. And Nordine, was he in charge? I didn't know him at the time. How about Biggs? I had no idea who Biggs was. Well, you told the FBI Biggs was one of the people in charge. He says, I don't think I did. So you told the FBI that Nordine, was one of the people in charge. He says, no, you're misconstruing. In retrospect, gets cut off. You told the FBI that Bertino was the one in charge. He says, yeah. You were one of those at the line yelling at police to let the Proud Boys at Antifa. You were there yelling that? Yeah. And you were present when Bertino was stabbed? Yeah. And you sprang into action, didn't you? He says, well, gosh, you make it sound like a superhero-like thing. I saw commotion. I started running up to see what was going on. I always instinctively know what to do when there's a threat. And so he pulls up an exhibit. It's a video. We can't see it. Somebody's running. Bertino got stabbed. They go frame by frame. Says, you testified that you just put your weight on the guy, but you actually punched him, didn't you? He says, no. Prosecutor plays it frame by frame. Well, I don't remember punching him, but that's your hand coming up and punching the guy. He says, no, that's just a reaction from being pepper sprayed. That's the guy on the ground, though. That's the man who attempted to murder 4 people. Yeah, that's him. And what we saw before was you raising your fist and bringing it down here, correct? He says, no, not correct. You saw a reaction after I was pepper sprayed in the eyes. Prosecutor says, I don't believe that. Let's go back in the video. So they rewind it frame by frame. Okay, Dominic. So he's on the ground right now, right? He says, I think so. And you're kneeling on him? I believe so. It's kind of chaotic. I was pushing down. So you knew where he was, right? He was under you. Yeah. And he says, it's clearly obvious. I was lifted up into a kneeling position and I wouldn't have been able to punch down on the guy. Punching down as you're coming up, it's like a hard thing to do. The video is playing. The guy on the ground becomes visible. Black guy with a beard, Rasta braids. Objection 403. Carmen Hernandez is saying this is really too much, Your Honor. There's no probative value of this. This is only showing the Proud Boys punching a black guy with a beard. And they've done this before. We saw they allowed another video, I think, of a black woman being punched. So they're trying to play these videos over and over and over again to make them sink in. Hernandez objects. I'm sure the judge keeps it in, overruled, of course. The officer who came down was the punk ass 50 who maced you. Is that what you said, Dom? Yeah. And so you weren't acting alone, were you? I was acting alone. There were a bunch of guys doing their own thing. I've seen multiple times when people feel it's their civic duty. The prosecutor is continuing cross-examination. Says there wasn't a plan laid out for what to do if Noblebeard was stabbed, right? Right. And so your reaction was to do what you did. Well, my reaction would always be to help out if someone just tried to kill 4 people. And the people around you decided to do the same thing. Sidebar. They move on. After this rally, you were excited about coming to Noblebeard's aid. You were excited about that. He said, well, I felt good about helping someone out. And so that's why you went down to North Carolina. Well, no, it was totally unrelated, but yeah. And you delivered that shield. Yes. And you and he reminisced about growing up in Rochester. Yes. And you told him what you'd done on 12/12. Yes, I did. And you also told Tario that you would be coming down to do that, right? Yeah. And that was around New Year's 2020. Yeah. And you'd been in the Proud Boys for a couple of months at that time. He said, about 2 weeks. Did you have your second degree then? I don't recall, maybe. After that meeting, he added you to the chat a couple days later. Is this a photo that Tario posted on 12/31? He says, yes, it was. It's called the Lords of War hashtag. Is this what he posted? Yeah, but he's referring to his podcast, Lords of War J6 J20. It's just his podcast, yeah. And the prosecutor asks him about it. So, Dominic, your hotel plans on January 6th fell through, and Enrique Tario responded to you. Yeah, I tried to help, and he gave me a suggestion. So, you wanted to be a Proud Boy because the country was under attack by radical socialists? He says, yeah, after everything I witnessed in the summer of 2020, cities burning to the ground, billions of dollars of damage, dozens and dozens dead, damage an order of magnitude greater than anything that happened in January 6th. And Kamala Harris was posting tweets to bail people out who were responsible for that. Tweet is still up. Cities burning to the ground. I was tired of seeing innocent protesters being attacked. So, Dominic, you thought your flag was under attack by radical socialists? My flag is sacred to me. Your family was under attack by radical socialists. That's what you thought, right? Yeah. And your freedom is under attack, right? Yeah. And that's why you're part of the reason you joined the Proud Boys? He says, yeah, I just answered that. Everyone's freedom was under attack by radical socialists. Shout out to Dominic Pezzola in there. Yeah, dumb prosecutor. Everybody's freedom was under attack by radicalist socialists. True. And that's one of the reasons you joined the Proud Boys? Well, I don't know if that's one of the reasons. Pattis is now asking for a sidebar, wants to raise some First Amendment issues, saying that his statements are protected by the First Amendment. Judge says this is a good time for a break. Judge excuses them for lunch. And we fast forward. Judge Kelly is back on the bench. Prosecutor opens up Dominic's notebook. There's a note in his journal. He says, there are many reasons why I want to join the Proud Boys. Love my family, my country, my flag, and my freedom, all of which are under attack by radical socialists. Did you write this, Dominic? Yeah, looks like my journal. It says here, willing to fight to the last breath. And he says, yeah, I use the word fight in the same way that I'm fighting this corrupt trial. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Woo, woo. Outstanding. Dominic Pezzola. You're willing to fight to the last breath? Yeah, I use the word fight in the same way that I'm fighting this corrupt trial. Prosecutor says, "You have a lot of opinions, don't you, Mr. Pezzola? Just getting the truth out. Now, you're pretty physically fit 41-year-old male. Yeah. So you can fight." And he's showing him something. He says, "Well, you don't have any evidence I signed this, but you wrote this." Yes. "And these are the reasons you wanted to join the Proud Boys, correct?" "I already answered that," he says. "These are the reasons you wanted to join the Proud Boys," right? The prosecutor's going to make sure he stays in control here. "Yeah, that's what it says." Sidebar. "So you wanted the Proud Boys to know that you had been in both subordinate and leadership positions in the Marines. You wanted everybody to know that." He said, "It's just another fact, Mr. K." Oh, man. "It's just another fact, Mr. K. Whatever you're asking. I'm just being honest with you. You thought it was important that the Proud Boys know that, right? I just put it in a journal for myself. That's my journal. This never made it out to anyone. It's in my journal that you're reading from. It's not on Facebook, idiot." Prosecutor's like, "Oh man, I am kind of dumb." Says, "One reason that you wanted to join the Proud Boys is because you knew how to lead, I guess. One reason is because you knew how to follow." He says, "Yes. And in the military chain of command, in the military, it's very important to do that." He says, "In the military, it is, and it's part of who I am." "The Marines left you with an ability to keep composure under pressure, didn't they?" "Yeah, that's true for any infantry soldier. And one of the reasons you wanted to join the Proud Boys is because you thought a civil war was imminent." He said, "Well, those observations were based on cities burning to the ground. So, yeah, true. Exactly. Yeah, I did. True. You believe that this is a battle of good versus evil? I still believe that. So do I. And that's one reason you joined the Proud Boys." "Well, just believe that. And it's one of the reasons you joined the Proud Boys, right?" "I don't believe it says that." Scrolls down to page 2. He says, in his journal, they're reading his journal now, right? In front of everybody in the jury. "I truly believe this is a battle between good and evil and freedom versus tyranny. You said that in your journal." He says, "Yeah, I said it's right there, but it's not a reason I joined the Proud Boys." Then he scrolls up to the top of the document and it says, "These are the reasons you wanted to join the Proud Boys." He said, "Well, it's in this list here." Now he's showing more references in the list. He's saying, "Well, there's other things here." Says, "I'm willing to stand first on the line to protect who I love and what we stand for." You said that, right? He says, "Yeah, correct. But that's along the lines of standing up against this corrupt trial with these fake charges." Yeah, amazing. Correct. Yeah, that's right. Along the same lines. Standing up, just like I'm standing up here in this corrupt trial with your fake charges. Exactly like that. Prosecutor says, "One of the first rallies you went to, you got into a fight." He says, "Yes, but the mob out of Antifa attacked a local politician. We stepped in to help out." "The person who stabbed Bertino was Antifa?" "I don't know. He was a man who tried to murder 4 people. Don't know." "And you celebrated after that in December?" "I don't know if I was celebrated." "You were celebrated?" "I don't know if I was celebrated." "You testified that you didn't post much on Parler?" "Yeah, I didn't really." "But you followed Tario and Biggs and Nordine and Bertino?" "Yeah." "And you upvoted posts that you like?" "Yeah." "And you upvoted 22 posts made by Bertino, right?" "I don't know. How should I know? It's 2 years ago." "You're asking to remember something that's impossible." "I have no idea." Prosecutor says, "Well, you upvoted a lot of his posts, which means you're a conspirator." "You upvoted this post. You said the GOP completely sold you out, all bought and paid for, bigger than Democrats. As Americans, we cannot stand idly by, saying revolution is evident. Stand up now or kneel forever." You upvoted that on Parler, right? He says, "It's a political opinion. There's nothing illegal about that." There wasn't anything illegal about that. Apparently now there is. government prosecutors take a look at that and they want to charge you and throw you in solitary for upvoting posts. This is their evidence in trial. This is what he's cross-examining over. Prosecutor says, this is unacceptable. And now Pattis is chiming in. Your Honor, objection. Sidebar happens. On December, you upvoted one of his posts. You said that this is unacceptable. It's every American's duty to stand up to this action. Right? You did that. Didn't you upvoted that? Dominic says, I don't know if you say so. You also upvoted. Next time things might be different. If every patriot had been armed, it may have turned out forever. You upvoted that too. He says it's a political opinion, weirdo. There's nothing illegal about it. He reads another one. This is a government prosecutor. They're just, we saw what the FBI was doing with the Twitter files, and you can imagine they're doing that with all of the other platforms. They are sitting around screenshotting people's illegal tweets and upvotes. He didn't even say it, okay? He didn't even type these messages. Or maybe it is an upload. I don't know. Is this an upload or an upvote? Either way, it doesn't matter. It's a political opinion. There's nothing illegal about it. You uploaded that on Parler. You uploaded, see, I think this is upvoted, right? This is why I think it's upvoted. You upvoted one of Bertino's posts. So Bertino is saying the things and he's just, retweeting them essentially. He's just retweeting them, right? It's a like or a retweet. Or maybe it's called an upload on Parler. I don't know. Maybe somebody in the chat can correct me, but it sounds like he's not even writing these. You also upvoted a number of Tario's posts, right? Tario wrote it and he just did something, a retweet or he liked it, right? Click that button or click this button, one of the two. I don't know. If I did have access, did have a case, I'd probably use this stuff too. Wow. Okay. Look at this. This is just outstanding. He's going through his posts. We're making a mockery of it. Dominic Pezzola is also making a mockery of it. The prosecutor asks, hey, Dominic, did you also upvote a number of Enrique Tario's posts on Parler? Pezzola says, I don't know. But if I didn't have a case like you, I'd probably use this stuff too. If my case was trash, I'd probably be trolling around through my old Parler posts too. You pathetic person. So the prosecutor says, well, now I want to show you a photo of you wrestling for the riot shield. Okay, so now the prosecutor, I'm imagining, is so irritated right now. I would kill to be in this room peacefully. Don't come after me, FBI. It's a saying. So you're in a situation here where the prosecutor has a very confident defendant who has, at this point, nothing to lose. He's accepted full responsibility for the entire case, said so at the beginning of his testimony. All of the other defendants has some pretty compelling testimony up until this point. And he's now saying openly in front of the jury that their case is garbage. So the prosecutor wants to close that chapter. Oftentimes in a case, we talk about presenting your case, your direct exam or your cross exam in chapters, closing the chapter on social media because he's getting blasted over it. Now I want to talk about the riot shield, saving one of the better chapters for the end or near the end. Dominic says, yeah, it's a phony trial because of the way you're fakely interpreting it. Prosecutor says, well, you were trying to go to J6 for most of early January. No, there was a conversation with my stepfather, but you were looking for a hotel reservations on January 3rd. He says, yeah, I was looking for a hotel on the 3rd. The event was on the 6th. What do you mean for most of early January? You hear that stupid question? This is a typical prosecutor question. You were trying to do that for like all of January, weren't you? For most of early January. The event was on the 6th. Not even in the first week's not even over. He started looking for a hotel on the 3rd. We call this kind of emotional Russell's conjugations. It's when you can, we'll fast forward. So you were looking for a hotel reservation on January 3rd. Yes. And you plan on still being there, but there was a change of command? Prosecutor asks him, on January 5th, you thought there was a chance of a full-blown effing war on January 6th. You thought that, right? Dominic said, well, yeah, given how the cities were being burned down in summer 2020, I did think anything was possible. And yesterday, you testified that on January 5th, you stayed in your hotel. You walked around for a little bit, but you were mostly in your hotel. But while you were out, someone yelled, get out of my city. He says, no, it was F the Proud Boys is what they yelled. And you threw a water bottle into the window of that car? He says, yes, I did. I threw a water bottle at them. They said, get out of my city. So I threw a water bottle at them. Now, the prosecutor is getting into the Washington Monument. Says, you went over to the Washington Monument the morning of the 6th, right? Did you know that Rufio was in charge? No, I didn't. But you told the FBI that. Well, by then I knew. Yeah, he was in charge of the march, but he wasn't in charge of me. I left the group. Dominic, you understood that the mission on January 6th was, quote, to raise hell? He said, well, I always understood our role was to be loud and obnoxious and to take the focus on the protesters getting beat up by cowards on the left. And so you get to a peace circle around 1250, 1251. And there's a photo here around the food trucks. You made it over there? I don't recall how close we got, but it's pretty visible. Yeah, it's you and Green and Lachaume, and you're also there with Ronnie and maybe Mr. Green's friend. He says, well, it's just the four of us. Prosecutor throws up an exhibit. You said that's when you heard a commotion. Dominic says, well, 2 years of solitary does damage to your memory. Not real sure. I thought you said you got transferred. He said, well, 28 months of incarceration, let me say that, has an effect. So the video is playing of the peace circle breach. Dominic says, yeah, this is around the point when we heard the commotion piquing our interest. Rioters are flooding over the barricades. Prosecutor, pause right there. Dominic, is this Pepe? He says, yeah. And is this another New York Proud Boy? He says, I don't know, it's hard to see. Well, that's you right now in the screen, isn't it? Yes, this accurately depicts what I testified to. And the person behind you is called Hooks? Dom says, I just came to find that out. And so approximately 40 seconds after the breach, you're already rushing over the barricades. He says, well, we're really just nitpicking at this point. We're really just kind of splitting hairs. I think I heard the commotion earlier. I just said I heard a ruckus. Maybe it was when Samsel started walking towards the barricade. And you testified that you wanted to find Mr. Pepe? Yeah. And that's why you're rushing past the barricades? Yeah. And Hooks was not with you at the food truck? No. Prosecutor says, wow, well, how fortuitous that you rush across the barricades with Hooks grabbing onto you. So I don't understand how that was fortuitous. Well, you met up with the Proud Boys before the first breach, correct? No. And you went through the barricade with Proud Boys? Absolutely not correct. Well, you told the FBI all of that in your first debriefing in January 2021. No, I don't remember that, and I don't believe that's correct. Well, we'll come back to that, he says. So you walked up that walkway with the purpose of finding Mr. Pepe, right? Yeah. And that's you coming up the walkway? Yeah. And that's Pepe? Yeah. And that's Merckx? Yeah. Is that a New York Proud Boy? Yeah. And that's Pepe pulling aside the barricades? Yeah. And that's you up front right now? Yeah. But you're not with Pepe. Well, I tried to get his attention, but he was a little bit of a frenzy on his own. Another video, metal fence. That was Pepe who just said that in camera, right? Yeah. And you have no firsthand knowledge that Ray Epps is a government informant, do you? Ray Epps enters the game again everywhere we go. Prosecutor says, you have no firsthand knowledge that Ray Epps is a government informant, do you? Well, he was telling me to go into the Capitol, and since that day, it's been wildly rumored that he's an informant. I've seen no evidence he isn't. We haven't been able to subpoena him. They want him here. We haven't been able to subpoena him. All of this is coming out in front of a jury. Hopefully, the jury is listening to this and they're setting aside their preconceived notions and recognizing what a catastrophe of a case this is for the government. Yeah, Ray Epps was on the FBI's most wanted list of J6 insurrectioners. They released a tweet, which is still posted. He's in there, and then they deleted it. He's there the night before saying going into the Capitol. He went into the Capitol. You can read his deposition. It's in there. He admits it. And no arrest. So the FBI thought he was violent. He actually went into the Capitol. He's also got a history as an oath keeper. He's dodging service so that he doesn't have to get subpoenaed. But the government says he's just this random stranger that nobody can account for. We haven't even been able to subpoena him. So then when the fence fell, you went up even further. He says, yeah, can I give some context? And the judge says, just answer the question. He says, well, I was under the impression we were allowed to answer and then explain, Judge. Prosecutor now shows him a write-up of his interview. You recognize this? No, I don't know what it is. He says it's all redacted except for the first sentence. He says it's a write-up of your statement. Defense says it's not a statement. Pezzola says whatever's on your screen, 6 out of 9 pages are redacted, so I have no idea what it is. So this won't refresh your recollection as to what you said to the FBI in 2021. And there's an objection and they're fighting over this. No, I don't know what it is. It's all redacted. I can't recognize it. Read this document to yourself. Yeah, I read it, he says. Okay, here it is. It's all redacted. It's 6 pages. I read it in 2 seconds. Here, it's all redacted. There's nothing in here. Yeah, it doesn't say FBI anywhere on it. So it won't refresh your recollection. It's just a bunch of letters. Amazing. It's just a bunch of letters. No, I can't understand. It's all redacted. There's nothing on here. Well, those letters make up words, don't they? Dominic says, I can neither confirm nor deny this is FBI. Apparently, it doesn't refresh my recollection because I don't know where this thing came from. I don't know what it is. Maybe don't redact it. So the prosecutor is getting flustered right now. I can't even tell you how upset this prosecutor is. So flustered. He just moves on, having a hard time. This is great. Dominic's doing a great job. This is outstanding. Says, well, you know, for this case, ideally this case is never even brought, but boy, is he, I think he's really flustering this prosecutor. Watch this hard pivot because he hard pivots now. He goes into this other video. He's playing this video. I want to show you this video now. That's you? Yeah. And that's green, right? Yeah. And your hat says respect is earned and beatings are free, right? Yeah. And that's Biggs, isn't it? He says, I've come to learn through this trial that, yeah, that's Mr. Biggs. Yeah. I didn't know him at the time, but now I know that's Biggs. We weren't insurrecting together as part of a conspiracy, but now I know you're charging us like that here today. So when the crowd surged forward, you did too? He says, yeah, I did. And now they go on to another video. Does this appear to be the same scene from a different direction? Yeah. And the man to the right, his name's Arthur? I think so. And we see someone waving a baseball bat in the foreground, don't you? That's you, right? Crowd is flooding past the fence. He says, yeah. And green's behind you. Yeah. And you look back and you saw someone shoving a police officer. He says, yeah, a man is shoving police. And you didn't stop there. No. And you didn't turn around. No. So you trampled barriers at the first breach and you didn't trample, you walked over. Yeah. And you did the same thing at the metal fence? Yeah. And you all badly outnumbered police, right? I'd say so. Yeah, most cops seem like they were just walking in line with us. And so you and fellow rioters were acting as an invading force at that point? Good call. Hernandez objects. Objection 403. Judge overrules it. Says we were acting as trespassing protesters who trampled 2 barricades. Yeah, in the process of trespassing. Exactly right. Exactly right. You said yesterday you viewed police as your enemies. No, I was using terminology taught by the US government when they teach soldiers to defend this country. Oh boy. No, I was using terminology the US government taught us when we're defending this country. Says now another crowd scene video, shield scene. Says Dominic, you testified you were telling police that their bullets could kill somebody. You told cops that, hey, you're going to kill somebody. Yesterday, the testimony was the cops were up on the upper terrace of the Capitol building. And another witness in this trial also testified that he reviewed the body camera footage and he could hear the cops calling people out. Black hat, gray beard, purple here, whatever it was. And people were going, click. And when it would hit, boom, they would say it audibly. Boom, click, boom. Gray hat. Boom, got him. Next. Next. Proud Boy, get him. Click. Boom, got him. Next. Who's next? Up there on the scene, up on the crowd from the congressional building. And somebody got shot in the cheekbone, blew a hole in his face, blood's all over the place. You testified that you were telling the police that their bullets could kill someone. Dominic grabs his shield. Bullets are flying all over the place. There was another scene. Somebody behind him got hit. Bullets may have been hitting the shield. Says, yeah, I did. And you didn't bother to pull down your mask so they could hear you? You didn't bother to pull down your mask so they could hear you? What a stupid question. He should have said, no, I didn't want to catch COVID. Weirdo. Anyways, no, I didn't pull my mask down. This man has his hands on the PO's neck. Yeah, up around his collar, I'd say. And so you grabbed at the shield when it was in Officer Odie's hands. You would agree with that? Yes. So the shield is in Odie's hands. It winds up in a guy with a W jacket hands, and then you took it from his hands, right? Yeah. You were trying to take it from Odie? Well, I was trying to protect myself. By taking his shield? Yes, correct. So you were trying to take his shield from his possession. Yes, I was trying to take it from his possession so I could keep from being killed. Yes. And that's your hand to the left side of the screen, Dom? He says, yeah, that's right. And that's your hand grabbing for Odie's shield? It is. Frame by frame, that's your hand on his shield? You were about to start pulling on it, right? He says, yeah, the intention was to cover my head from bullets flying in. How are you going to cover your head without taking possession? Dominic says, well, in simple terms, yes, trying to take possession, but that's why. To cover my head from the bullets flying in. Prosecutor asks, well, tell us when you think you lost possession of the shield. Video's playing, video's playing. You still have possession right now? Yeah. Well, my hands are on it, right about here. You can see this individual, I believe, he's shoving me out of the way and I fell back. Prosecutor says, pretty chaotic, right? Yeah. Spray was coming in multiple directions. He says, yeah, it was. And you didn't have time in real time to observe a man in a W jacket, right? Yeah, correct. So what you've testified to yesterday about a man in a W jacket, that's based on a review of video? Yeah, it is. New video is playing. Prosecutor says, and that's you right there, right? He says, yes. And that's you again right here? Yes. And here at 42 seconds, that's you pulling on a shield. Yeah. And you were still pulling on it at that point. Yes, I was. Now they play another video. Dominic says, okay, this is where a man in a W jacket is reaching down. And the prosecutor says, this man in a bike helmet is spraying in the direction of the police? And he says, yeah, he is. He says, you said that a crowd was unarmed, right? He says, yeah, generally unarmed. And I don't think bear spray is dangerous. You said, you don't think bear spray is dangerous? He says, I didn't say it wasn't dangerous. You said the crowd was unsuspecting. He says, I'm not sure. crowd was unsuspecting. And here we see a scene where Dominic is on the ground. And yeah, there's Dominic, right? I believe that's Dominic, and that's the shield. And so we see kind of what's happening here. A man in a jacket is standing up straight at this point. This man is over here trying to help me up. So the shield is the first thing I grabbed. Okay, so Dominic is here. The man's trying to help him up. Shield is grabbed here. Another image in the same series. Now you're closer to the ground than in the last, right? So now he's closer to the ground than in this one. And this guy's trying to help him up. Okay, and we see the shield here as well. So you're now on your side and you're completely on the ground. He says, yeah, a man must have dropped me, but you've got possession here now. Now I've got full possession here. Okay, so now this guy dropped him. This guy's helping him up. He's got one hand here, one hand here. And this one hand here, one hand here. It's total madness in the scene. Eventually he gets dropped and now he's on his left elbow using the shield, like he testified to yesterday, to lift himself up. Prosecutor says, once you got the shield, you worked your way back into the crowd? Yeah. You didn't give it back at that point? No. You didn't cover your head? Actually, I did. I remember a couple of bullets hitting it right where my head would have been. Right after you got up? No, not at that point. Well, when? When did the bullets come? I don't know. I can't be certain, man. This was 2 years ago. In the same area? In the same general area. He said it's like a fog of war type of thing. The situation that fast paced, my adrenaline was pumping. I just have a vague recollection. And so the judge says, all right, this is a good spot for a break. We're just going to fast forward, and jury has 10 minutes. Everybody go relieve yourselves. Get a fresh cup of water. Don't talk about the case. We'll see you back here in 10 minutes. And we fast forward right ahead. Judge Kelly's back on the bench. Something happened here. Don't know what it was. Over the break, must have been a little bit of an exchange, but Judge Kelly is back on the bench. And the defense attorney says, Your Honor, I did not in any way, shape, or form did I mean to threaten the court. I said it took every fiber of my being to keep myself from walking out from the way the government was using this person's diary, but I meant no offense. Okay, so they were rummaging through his diary because this government is disgusting. They don't have any actual evidence, so they have to go get his journal, right? Your private stuff. That's how gross these people are, just so you know. If this was an insurrection cut and dry, they wouldn't need to go through his journal, but it's not. So they went through his journal because they're just totally spineless. But anyways, so the defense attorney is upset about this, says, I can't believe this is happening here in America and you're allowing this to go on, but it did. He said, judge says, I didn't take it as a threat, but I do think that all of us should take it down a notch. Yeah, who? The defense? Because they're upset with your rulings? He did think that comment was unnecessary. He said, you know, guys, this trial could do with a little less commentary from the lawyers. Why don't you guys just keep it down? Stop complaining about my terrible rulings. So now bring in the jury. Jury comes back in. Prosecutor continues cross-examination of Dominic Pezzola. They now show another video. Elicits from Dominic that he's leaving the scene with Green. Says he met up with this guy called Charles Donahoe. Charles asked you if you were a Proud Boy? Yeah. He kind of seemed excited you had a shield, I guess. And he asked you to take a photo of it, of his shield? He says, yeah, correct. Now Roger's got this one up for us. I don't really know exactly why. But he says, you and Green and Donahoe, you walked back to a concrete wall? Yeah. And Donahoe helped you carry the shield? He says, yeah. And now I want to show you this one. That's Donahoe going by, and that's him helping you carry it. He says, someone said you just stole a riot shield, and you say, yeah, right? And we can see right here at the start of this. Let's make sure this is okay. So right here, you'll see them walk through. That's one guy, and that's Dominic, and they got both their hands on the shield there. right? So that's what they're talking about. And he says, yeah, I was just trying to get him out of my hair. Prosecutor now shows him this one, puts this one up in front of the jury. Oh, there you are with your shield, huh? Very interesting. Says, Mr. Pezzola, have you ever you yourself used flashbangs? Yeah. Was the last time when you were in the military? That's been forever. Before I got out, I've been out for about 20 years. So you haven't used flashbangs since? No. And you are aware that the police also have a round and pear-shaped device known as a sting ball? Do you know that? Yeah. And it delivers less of a bang? Well, I mean, I don't agree with that. I think sting balls were also improperly used. And that's based on what? Your handouts that you got in the military? Well, it's common knowledge about to anyone who knows anything about crowd control. Not a good idea to lob projectiles, explosives into peaceful protesters who are standing around. But he says, but you don't have any specific training about sting balls. So, like, if we want to lob sting balls, we can, right? He says, yeah, sting balls carry lesser, but a similar explosive power. Prosecutor puts up another exhibit. Says, you just testified, you know that what's in a sting ball from not being trained in the military. And the defense says, Judge, we have a sting ball dispute right now. Are you serious? Overruled. We can get into it. Dominic says, I know, I've read about it. So your testimony about flashbangs yesterday was then incorrect. So he's beating him up on this flashbangs thing. Hey, we didn't throw flashbangs. We threw sting balls. It's so minor and petty. But I'm old school, and that's all we had back then. Prosecutor says, okay, so you've never worked with the Metro Police and you don't know their protocols. No, but I do know police brutality when I see it. And so the standard that you were applying was what? The Dominic Pezzola standard? You don't need to be trained to know that an explosive can kill you. No, or to know that people's faces have been shot off in the crowd and there's blood all over the place. You don't really need to be trained for that. And the cops were shooting people, and there were with non-lethal force, right? Non-lethal things, but they were sitting up there and shooting them. So you don't need to be trained to know that an explosive can kill you. According to a prosecutor, you do. Maybe they do. You don't have to no. So the prosecutor says, you don't have any training to know if these were being used properly, but you're testifying about it anyways. And he's looking at him like, what? Did you offer your shield to any of these women that you wanted to protect? I don't think they would have accepted it, he said. You ended up near scaffolding? They show a video of it. And you have a shield above your head chanting USA, right? Yeah. And Lachaume's to your left? Yeah. And you're saying F you, right? He says, well, that was right after the flashbangs had been thrown. Yeah, I was pretty upset. I was afraid for my life. So that's why you were holding the shield up and chanting? Well, I didn't know what would happen next, he said. Another image is on the screen. Is this the back of your head? Yeah. And is this Pepe? Yeah. That's Lachaume? Yeah. Hooks? Yeah. New York? Yeah. This one? I'm not sure about that one. How about this one? I believe so. And you met up in the area with them, right? He says, yeah, we went into a bound area. And this is an image of just people standing around, right? Nobody's riding or anything yet until they start lobbing stuff off. So now they play the breach under the 3 scaffolding. He said, I was being pushed. I wasn't resisting. But you didn't offer the shield back, did you? He says, no, I didn't offer the shield back. Now we're at the top of the scaffolding. And again, he didn't give the shield back. Says, is that your voice saying we ain't effing stopping? Says, better decide which side you're on, MFers. You think Antifa's bad, just you wait. He said, are you saying all of those things in this video? He says, yes, sir. He says, you said, why don't you shut up, okay? I took this from an effing cop, STFU is what he says. Right? He says, yes, I said those things. Now I want to show you a video of a breaking of the windows. Pezzola is saying the pane on the left was already broken. Yeah, okay, it was broken. I didn't do it. Somebody else broke that. Did you strike the right pane with the shield? Says, yeah, I struck a completely destroyed pane of glass with a shield. I wouldn't consider it a pane anymore, but I did strike it. So you're saying you did no damage? Pezzola says, well, you're just twisting my words, Mr. K. That's all. Your goal of busting the window was to have someone listen to you. Is that why you did it? He says, correct. Yeah, express our First Amendment rights, but trespassing. We didn't have the right to have our voices heard. And this was a way to get the government to listen to you? He says, yeah, at this moment, yeah, it was. You previously said that you wanted to join the Proud Boys to fight to your last breath, to fight and prevent radical socialists from running the country, right? Yeah. Now there's CCTV video footage. Pezzola's leaving at 2:36. Pezzola returns the shield. You see the line of the police near the window? Yeah. And up until this point, you haven't offered the shield yet, right? He says, I was just making my way out. It was a last minute decision to give it back to him. You see this police officer? Yeah. He reached out towards you? Yeah. And now you give it back to him, right? Once he grabbed onto it. Yeah, something like that. I just said, here you go. You can have it. Now you turn back towards the police and you blow smoke towards the police, right? No, I just blew it into the air. I think I turned around because I was having words with him about shooting people in the face. You were having sharp words with him? Yeah, I was still upset after what I'd seen. And once you left the building, you met up with Arthur? Yeah. Hooks was there with you? I can't be for sure about that. At the hotel, you saw Green? Yeah. And Ronnie? Yeah. Everyone was celebrating? Yeah. Bragging, right? Yeah, they were. Ronnie said he bear sprayed a cop. I don't remember. The atmosphere was generally happy. He says, yeah, it was like celebrating a football game. You remember Bertino saying that you should have gone further? I may have. I don't remember all these tiny facts. You get a message with Tario's voice instructing you to say that you're not with the Proud Boys. You got that message, right? Yeah. And you breached onto Capitol grounds at the same time as a lot of other Proud Boys. I can't testify to that. At the time, I don't remember. I know that now it looks like there were a few in the vicinity. You went to the front of the line after the next breach. You went forward after that breach as well. Yeah. And you took a riot shield. Yeah, from a protester. You took it to the back of a plaza and then back to the front. Yeah. And you pushed up those stairs with the other Proud Boys? Yeah. I had no idea anyone else was around me. And you busted open a Capitol window with a riot shield. He says, yeah, one pane. All that was left was the cigar video. Yeah. And you were excited about your victory? I don't know if I was excited, he says. Maybe it was an adrenaline rush, surreal moment. I knew we couldn't take this MFer over if we had just tried hard enough, is what he said. And so this is the video that they're playing. He's got his cigar in his mouth and he's saying some things. Says, I knew we couldn't take this MFer over if we just could take it over if we just tried hard enough. POYMFB, objection. What does that mean? He says, POYMFB. It's just a saying in the club. Yeah, but you mentioned the club, though. Yeah, pertaining to my guys. Kennerson, done. So that is the defense. That was the prosecutor finishing up cross-examination, which I don't think was good. The ending part of this was a little stronger. Obviously, he saved this stuff for the end because it is the worst part of it. It's all of the actual video footage and audio recording. But up until that part, it was pretty much dead. And Dominic Pezzola did a great job explaining everything and explaining what a sham this trial is. Now, how the DC jurors receive that is going to be another question. We'll see. But this continues. So Metcalf comes back out and does a redirect. And remember, the redirect is to rehabilitate. So he says, Dom, you know, the prosecutor was just up here. He's referring to your video as a victory speech. At the time, it felt awesome, right? But when you watch the video now, how do you feel? He says, idiotic. Anything else come to mind? They play it again. How do you feel looking at that video? He says. Says, I feel like I'm looking at a homeless man going into the Capitol looking for food. A homeless man going into the Capitol looking for food. Is this a conspiracy to overthrow the U.S. government? No. It didn't mean we, the Proud Boys. It meant we, the protesters. Not overthrowing the country. Your actions after the breach, were they spontaneous? He says, yeah, the most spontaneous thing I've ever done in my life. My reactions were like on autopilot. Was any single of those steps that the prosecutor mentioned ever planned? Or did you ever talk to anybody about this? No. You were asked about Ray Epps here. I asked that I be able to show this stipulation. And the stipulation we know was something previously entered. And we don't know what that was. But Dom says, I'm going to go to the picture from Matt Green's phone. What was the time step again? He says 12:50:41. Puts it up on the screen. What's happening here? This is us returning after we left the group. That's me, that's Art, that's Aaron, that's Matt. Matt's taking the picture. Says, I think I separated from Art and Aaron around that time. That was before I separated from Green. Where was the place of the first breach? He asks. I'm not sure. I think this is the Jefferson. Is it behind that? I'm not sure. Well, explain from here what happened. Well, I believe the food trucks were up here. And that's when I saw, he says wrong. And that's when I saw the orange hat guys crossing the street. And from here, you went towards the food trucks and then towards where the first breach was. Yeah. And this is at 12:51. Yeah. When was it that you got behind William Pepe? About 12:57. And when did you leave the march? 11:15 a.m. And when you left the march, did you speak to anyone other than who you were walking with? He says no. Did you have any plans to storm the Capitol? No. Another video is being played. We're in the West Plaza. A sting ball is being detonated. Does this video accurately reflect what you saw, Dominic? He says, yeah, it does. The situation turned from tense to extremely dangerous. You saw approximately 12 of these? He says, yeah, it was terrifying. I went from a protest to a war zone in seconds. Real panic in there. There was going to be tremendous loss of life if something didn't change. Saying, I am fearful that I might not even make it home after that rally. So they play a video now. Blood's all over the ground. Defense says, Dominic, you saw Mr. Black and people trying to put medical supplies on his face. Yeah. And you were behind those individuals looking in. Yeah. And was this when you saw pointing to officers? When we saw you pointing at officers? He says shortly after that. Said, I believe I was watching this whole scene play out. I was basically 2 feet away from this. And bullets were still flying by? He says, no, they ceased for a period here. Officers came here to see what was going on, right? Yeah. And then shots resumed? Right. Yes. What else do you remember about this scene or this time frame? He says, this is where the crowd started really reacting angrily. They tried to take Mr. Black here. The crowd figured the cops out of line, and it just escalated again. And what were you doing? That's when the barrage started again. Did you intend to keep the shield? No. Did you intend to take it home with you? No. Did you want to sell the shield on eBay? No. Were some of the times when you didn't give the shield back, were you still in fear? He said the whole day escalated. It didn't seem safe to return the one thing that was protecting me. How long did you have the shield for? Maybe an hour, maybe less. And 23 of those minutes you were inside the Capitol? Yes. 23 minutes inside the Capitol. Did you yell inside the Capitol? No, I was awestruck. The magnificence of it. Never been there before. It's like a palace. It is. Did you know where you were going? No. Did you follow a crowd? At one point, we did hear a police officer say we could stay as long as we were peaceful. Describe your behavior while you were up there in the Capitol. He says it completely peaceful. What was your state of mind at the time? He said, well, reality was starting to settle in. It was time to go. After we were told we could stay if we were peaceful, we figured we were violating some type of law, but we never imagined it would be as serious as it turned out to be. No, well, they didn't recognize that they were going to be made to be political enemies and scapegoats. Why did you join the Marines? I wanted to serve my country. And I want to ask you about your notebook. Where did the government find this? My wife's closet, maybe? I think. Probably going through her underwear too. I was trying to get my thoughts out. I was very concerned with riots and looting and burning of the cities. I saw these guys were standing up for people being attacked, and I wanted to get my thoughts out. Read it out loud for us. He said, well, many reasons I want to become a Proud Boy. And he opens up his journal. I'm the first generation American. I'm seeing lockdowns and a tyrannical government. When you joined the Marines, did you ever think you'd be in federal court and this would be used against you as evidence in America? Objection sustained. You say, and I agree, I'm just like so gross. So gross that they don't care. They don't care. They have no limits. They'll just do anything to win. No decency. And not all of them. A couple of them are good. You say here you took an oath to defend and support the Constitution. Is that a crime? No. Yet this is being used against you as evidence in federal court. Judge says, let's go to the phones. They come back. Dominic, keep reading. He says, oh, I took an oath. He's reading from his journal, saying, I took an oath to defend the Constitution from all enemies and it doesn't expire. I've been in subordinate and leadership positions in the Marines. My schedule is flexible. I know how to keep composure under pressure. So it's like he's making kind of a, pros and cons list. Like, do I have the skill set for this? Should I be doing the organizing his thoughts, which is normal until the government makes you a political enemy of the state. You thought other Proud Boys shared same political views as you? Yeah, I did. It was around the time that conservatives started being censored off most social media. What else made you want to join the Proud Boys? He says camaraderie. There's a sentence in here about fighting. What was that? I'm willing to fight till my last breath to make sure my children don't inherit a communist country. Did you think you'd be coming to DC to fight? No, I meant it like the way I fought for custody for my daughter for years. Do you consider this free speech? I do. When you joined the Proud Boys, did you intend to be physically violent with anybody? Was that your goal? No. Keep reading. In a civilian world, Dom says, I've been in construction industry most of my life. I know what it means to have to work with a team to accomplish a mission. In the Marine Corps, I was a super grunt, they called us. I was awarded sharpshooter badges. I was also taught martial arts. I've been a boxer since childhood. Dom, did you punch that guy on the ground in December? No, I didn't. He was lying on his face. There was blood on the ground. It was totally impossible for me to have caused that injury. And the prosecutor said you missed 9 drills in the Marines? My first child's mother turned into a hopeless drug addict after our child was born. She'd disappear for long periods, leave me as a single parent, so I had to leave to tend to my daughter. She's the most important thing in the world. And going back to this letter that you wrote, did you send it to anybody? No. Anybody read this before it was taken from your house? No, not even my wife. What's your thought process on this letter being used against you? Objection sustained. Read the next part. He says, my employees are highly skilled, would like to keep working and save enough to quietly and comfortably retire with my wife and daughters. He says, yeah, I'm no longer able to do that. I'm completely destitute now. Would the Marines have helped you reach that goal? Objection sustained. He keeps reading. That's why I believe 1,000% upon our patriots to stand up and take back our God-given liberties. Those on the other side, they want to kill us and our way of life. Did what you wrote, Dominic, did you plan on that leading to January 6th? No. Did you have any plan to do any conspiracy on January 6th with anybody ever at any time? Dominic says no. Thank you for your service, Dom. From Stephen Metcalf and from us here, thank you for your service, Dom, and your excellent testimony. He is now done calling to the prosecutor's face this entire thing a sham, because it is. So the judge says, all right, well, that was a wild Exam. All right. Where are we at? Defense. Does Mr. Nordine rest? Defense attorney Smith says yes. Biggs, do you rest? Yes. Mr. Real. Hernandez. Yes. Mr. Tario. Yes. And Pezzola? Yes. The defense rests. The judge is dismissing the jurors for the day, and the attorneys stay. Pezzola steps down from the stand. They're going to work out a stipulation that might obviate the need for any rebuttal case. We're turning to the last remaining jury instructions, which we are not going to spend time on here. And there will be motions to strike that we'll cover as well. Carmen Hernandez is still arguing. She brings up the motion to strike the videos used against Real. The government just filed a response. Knierson doesn't want to rest until the court formally rules on that. So Hernandez is asking something in writing from the government about the spray issue. They just brought that out of nowhere. And so let's see what the judge says. Court wants to put off the discussion. He says, let me read your motion, Carmen. I haven't read it yet. 2 remaining jury instruction issues. Hernandez still arguing. Next tweet. Hernandez still arguing. Next tweet. Is she still going? Shout out to Carmen Hernandez, defense attorney for Zachary Real. Nick Smith says, Your Honor, can we start with the jury tomorrow at 9 a.m.? That's the defense. No response. Wondering if the government's going to call a rebuttal witness. Talking about a stipulation, talking about a sealed matter, and boom, we come to a close. The judge says, all right, yeah, 9 a.m. tomorrow works. If we start then, we'll have the best chance to finish everything we need to do. The court stands in recess. Looks like tomorrow morning there'll be a final stipulation. The government will rest its case. We'll do jury instructions, and we'll start closing arguments tomorrow. Woo, woo. That is going to be a doozy, no doubt about it. So we're getting close to the close on this thing. Ultra shout outs to Roger Parloff and the people who are there covering this for us live so that we can peer inside and see exactly what is going on. But the defense rests. Proud Boy trial, day 59. Tomorrow will be day 60. 60 days of the Proud Boys trial. We're getting close to a verdict. Dominic Pezzola carried us out to the close with an absolutely outstanding, I think, exam. I thought he really did a great job. And I can't imagine the government is happy about any of that. So we'll see what the closing arguments look like. Case is extremely weak. They're trying to make something out of nothing. We'll continue to cover it, of course. Thank you for subscribing as we do. Thank you for sharing this with other people, telling them what's going on. We're getting to the close. We're getting to closing arguments. We're getting to a verdict at some point soon. It's crunch time. So we spent a good portion of the day on that. We also talked about Alvin Bragg being blown out of New York. The federal judge ruled against him. He's going to appeal it, and we'll see where that goes. But my friends, that is it for us, and we are done on the day. And so we are going to leave it there. We're going to say and see what you have to say about this over from our friends on YouTube, on Rumble, on Locals, on Twitter. Before we wrap it up on this lovely day, let's see who is here. And we were going to call this one out. Hey, in fact, we have this one on the mind map. I actually put this one on the mind map to remind myself. Look at this. Here we go. It's shout out, happy birthday, Johnny and Fred. Johnny is the rascally, he's a dog actually, but he has uranium contracts with Jeffrey Epstein and all sorts of stuff. He's here. What did he say today? He said, to start us off, he said, Rob, ladies and gentlemen, Johnny is 1 year old today. Woo, woo. Happy birthday, Johnny. Says Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Gates, General Flynn, and more just left. Great party. Johnny also joined the Proud Boys. Wow, I told you. He's crazy, man. This Johnny guy is crazy. So, man, he's hanging out with some pretty cool people. I wonder how that was. And he joined the Pride Boys. Oh, the Pride Boys, not the Proud Boys. Well, that's different. Well, I'm not sure what they do in that organization. But all right, so that's from Fred and Johnny. And thank you, Fred. And Fred sent in an email, and so that's how I knew it was his birthday. And so we're very appreciative, Fred and Johnny. Love you guys both. Hopefully you're doing well. Thank you for the chat. Isaac Bowl says, hoping this jury is paying close attention. Hopefully they are hearing some of this stuff. That is from Isaac Bowles. Captain Flatastic says, Rob, absolutely no one emotes the flat screen like you. Great entertainment when politics are so, yeah. Shakespeare be what? Thank you for that, Captain Flatastic. It's a heck of a trial. I'm glad that you're here and joining us. You know, I'm glad. I never thought it would be something that we would be doing together, is reading live tweet threads of federal trials. Who knew? But here we are, and we're having fun, and I think, getting to look inside of something that otherwise we would never pay attention to. I mean, I know that I probably, maybe I would be reading all the tweet threads, but you know, you still get the point. We can explore it together, and I'm grateful that we get to do it. Fred is here, says, Johnny just said Judge Kelly is a poopy pants. I didn't say it, Judge. I didn't say it. Johnny did. Good to see you, Fred and Johnny. Patrick says, bear mace is less than lethal, but that mace is the max for non-lethal chemical spray. Yeah, another good comment there from Patrick. I thought it was a very irrelevant consequence, a very, very minimal consequence. Difference between sting balls and spray. You know, it just kind of felt, or the other ones just kind of felt unnecessary. And so, hey, our last one came in from Jackie Carrion. Thank you, Jackie. Says, Rob, I enjoy your narrating of the Proud Boy trial. You make it worthwhile. Many blessings to you, my friend. And thank you very much, Jackie. Jackie Carrion in the house. I very much appreciate all of these YouTube chats. And I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm glad that we get to go through it together, because it's extremely important. You know, it's extremely important stuff. And I wish more people could actually see what is happening in this horrendous, you know, debacle. Hey, we had Sedona Rocks over on Rumble. Says, thanks for covering the trial. Great chat here on Rumble too. I know I've got Rumble open. What, Isaac Bowles? Did I miss your entire super chat? Sorry, I probably got distracted. What did I miss? Wait, what? Oh, I didn't read the leftard comment. Yeah. Says, hoping this leftard jury. Well, I was trying to be kind of nice to the jury. We don't know that they're officially leftards yet. That's why I didn't read it. I was trying to be nice. I have my fingers crossed for the jury. I'm hopeful that it doesn't go askew. That's why I didn't read it. but you noticed I didn't read it. Hey. Sorry about that. Thanks for calling me out on it, man. You called me out big time. He says, that's, hey, you didn't rude. You didn't read my entire super chat. It's funny. All right. So Sedona Rocks was giving us a shout out over on Rumble. Says, yeah, a great chat here on Rumble too. Exactly right. Look at this chat. Look at this chat, man. It's lit. So we got Jacob Castro. We got T-Tones, Janix in the house, Elucidation Station. Good to see everybody. La Azteca, Jacob Castro, and Sedona Rocks all over on Rumble. We love everybody on Rumble. Yeah, very fun. Okay, cool stuff. And then we've got to say hello to our Twitter friends before we jump over to our very short after party today, because we are tight on time. Man, I lose so much time in those tweet threads. It just evaporates. It's like tunnel vision when we're going through that testimony. It's just amazing. Hey, whoa, we got some people paying. We got some people on Twitter. Whoa, we got 35 viewers on Twitter. Holy mackerel. All right, we got a couple comments. Yeah. Oh, Victoria says it's crap over here. Tried watching, but it keeps freezing. Danny says, if you will not stand with the 77 men at Mananas Bridge when the shot heard around the world was fired, then get out of my country. We had a couple other comments. Yeah, we got Paul Mino. Says, man, we were up to 67 viewers at one time. What if New York was California and California was New York? Says Supersonic Station. Would anything change? Would anything really be different at all? I don't think so. All right, and so that is over from our friends on Twitter, our friends on Rumble, our amazing friends on YouTube, and we're very grateful for all of the lovely support. Let me check I think we've caught everything. Okay, and so that means we are done for the day. We are going to go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com for our short after party and debrief. Before we get out of here, I want to say shout out to our mods, our friends Vienticus Prime, K Bean, Just Causes in the house. We got Playing Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zulu, Geomancy, Zach Nichols, John Allen, Janek 909, Dog Digger, Donut Mind Me, Sleepy Dog Lee, our friend Geegum Geegum, and once again, happy birthday to Johnny and Fred, our little uranium canine friend. All right. And so that, my friends, is it for us on the day. YouTube members and locals, we'll see you for about 5 minutes and then we're going to get kicked off. But my friends, we'll see you right back here tomorrow so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye, everybody.